Hello everybody and welcome to the story of how I went from level 1 to level 120 with the Spellblade in Soulstone Survivors. Now full disclosure, I had already put about 5 hours into the game before starting this video, so I had almost all of the initial passive abilities unlocked. I had also completed a few levels with the Curse of the Void activated, and before this video I played through most of the game as the Hound Master, but I was itching to try out the Spellblade, and that's exactly what I did. I wanted to start this journey in the Dungeon of Despair level, because I had yet to activate my Curses of the Voids modifiers on it yet. I activated all the curses for difficulty 1 in the Dungeon of Despair, and I started my first run as the Spellblade. My first run went very smoothly, even though I had no idea what spells synergized with the Spellblade. I mainly tried to obtain arcane spells and swing spells because it just seemed to fit the general Spellblade archetype. I ended up with the abilities Arcane Disc, Quick Strike, Heroic Strike, Firebolt, and Bladestorm. With these abilities, I easily breezed through this stage on difficulty 1, and I was very impressed with how much damage Bladestorm did, even though it was a spell that I acquired late into the run. After beating this level, I was now level 7, and I was ready for difficulty 2 in the Dungeons of Despair. But before I went on to the next level, I wanted to upgrade my skill tree. I only started playing this game a few days before making this video, so I had no idea how the skill tree worked. But I did notice there was a character portrait of the Spellblade on the outside of the circle of the skill tree. When I tried clicking on it, it kept saying, you don't have enough skill points with this character to purchase this skill. I had no idea what that meant, and I figured I'd probably figure it out later when I had more levels with this character. So I moved on and equipped some runes. I equipped Shclatts, which gave me 15% damage reduction from all sources. Critical Mastery, which added my critical chance to my critical damage. Weapon Expert, which lets you start the game with a special weapon skill for your currently equipped weapon, and Dash Mastery, which increases your dash speed by 50%. I was now ready to enter the Dungeon of Despair difficulty 2 with all curses activated. Because of the Weapon Expert rune, I started out with an additional uppercut-like ability. I decided to stick with some of the abilities I liked from the first run, such as Quick Strike, Heroic Strike, and Bladestorm, and I also tried a new ability called Arcane Power, which increased my multicast modifier by 50%. There are tons of different passive buffs you can get in the game which are extremely important to your run, but I'm not going to go over all of them in this video, but I will say I always tried to pick up multicast buffs whenever I could, because multicast gave your spells a chance to reactivate immediately after use, and I thought this seemed very useful. It basically means double damage, and honestly, it looked cool. When the screen was filled with a huge storm of spells activating over and over again, I thought that looked badass. With all these spells, I ended up easily beating the Dungeon of Despair difficulty 2. The experience I gained from that run got me to level 10. Level 10 is an important level because it means you can craft a new weapon from the blacksmith. New weapons grant you 2 new abilities. Your starting ability changes to something unique to that character and weapon, and 1 additional weapon skill is added to the pool of spells. Luckily for me, I have the Weapon Expert rune equipped, so I get to start with both new weapon skills. Immediately after reaching level 10, I went over to the blacksmith and crafted the Arcane Scimitar. The Arcane Scimitar came with the ability Arcane Slash, which fires an Arcane Slash forward. It looks like Zoro's Hawkwave, but purple. Eagerly to try it out, I went into the caves of Dal'Zog, difficulty 3. My basic weapon skill was now a large range arcane slash, and even though it didn't cover as wide as an area of my original sword, it did way more damage. I also started with an additional special skill called Arcane Overload, which when activated threw arcane orbs all around me. I had some medium range damage and close range AoE, and I was feeling powerful. Now because I had 2 new weapon skills, I needed to find spells that synergized well with these. And both of my weapon skills were arcane, so I decided to grab as many arcane abilities as I could find. I ended up getting Arcane Power, Magic Missiles, and Arcane Sparks. I also got Shadow Orb early into the run, which didn't really synergize with the build I was going for, but I ended up keeping it because I thought it looked cool. I cleared this level with relative ease, and I was impressed by how much damage the arcane abilities were able to put out. At this point, it seemed Arcane was much more AoE focused compared to my last build, which was great for clearing large stacks of mobs, but made the boss fights feel much more difficult. After beating this stage, my level went from 10 all the way up to 16. When I went to the skill tree, I noticed I still couldn't unlock skills related to the Spellblade character, which I was a little disappointed about. I decided to go back into the Dungeon of Despair, but this time on difficulty 3 with all curses activated. At this point, difficulty 3 was a piece of cake for me, but in this run I found 2 new arcane skills, Arcane Beam and Arcane Assault. I was pretty disappointed with Arcane Beam. In concept, it sounds really cool. You shoot out an arcane beam of energy wherever you are aiming, but it has 2 problems. One, it doesn't pass through enemies, which is a huge problem because by the end of the run, there's so many enemies on the screen you can barely see the floor. And its second problem, it doesn't do enough damage to justify only hitting one enemy at a time. Basically, it sucks. But oh boy, I was impressed with Arcane Assault. With its long range and high damage, it was the perfect ability to use to poke bosses while I danced around their barrage of attacks. It felt like the best arcane skill. With Arcane Assault and Arcane Disc, I was easily able to defeat this stage, and with all the EXP I gained, I went from level 16 to 22. Now being level 22, I headed over to the skill tree eager to level up some of my meta progression abilities, and to my pleasant surprise, I found that the Spellblade skill tree was now unlocked, and the first ability in the tree was called Riftwalker. Riftwalker reads, the Spellblade may now interact with astral rifts that are opened by killing enemies to gain astral power, which can be consumed to enter a cosmic form. I had no idea what that meant, but I thought it sounded really cool. I unlocked a few more passive meta skills and I jumped right back into the action. This time I decided on the stage, the Scorching Valley difficulty 4 with all curses activated. I went in with the same strategy as I did last time. I got as many arcane skills as I could, and I made sure to get Arcane Disc and Arcane Assault for high single target damage to bosses. But on this run I noticed something different. There were purple AoE effects appearing around the stage. During this run I thought they were doing damage to the enemies, so I tried to stand in them to lure enemies into them to help with my overall DPS. But there is one other thing that caught my eye during this run. Every once in a while a small rift would appear, which looked like a tear in space. When I walked into this rift, my character started glowing purple, and an AoE effect appeared around my character. This is the cosmic form that I just recently unlocked. It was really cool looking, and I assumed it helped my overall DPS, which was perfect because at my current level, difficulty 4 stages were no joke. I needed all the DPS I could get. On difficulty 4 stages, not only do you have to deal with 2 bosses at once, but you also have to deal with these towers that spawn around the map. These towers will shoot AoEs at your character from a long distance. If you don't kill them in time, more will spawn and eventually the ground will become full of red incoming AoE markers. These towers are extremely annoying, but through all of the chaos, I still barely managed to get a win over this level. It was extremely close though. At the end, I only had 36 HP, but it was all worth it. Because the experience I gained from clearing this stage, my level went from 22 to 33, a whopping 11 levels. This means I had 11 more skill points to use at the skill tree. I put all these skill points into increasing my cosmic powers and making it more likely to spawn cosmic rifts. After beating the Scorching Valley difficulty 4, I decided to attempt the Caves of Dalzog difficulty 4. Feeling confident in my previous victory, this was basically a rinse and repeat of the Scorching Valley. Get arcane abilities, destroy annoying towers when they spawn, and try not to die. During this run, I wanted to test out Arcane Missile and Arcane Sparks. Arcane Missile shoots projectiles in the direction you are pointing, and Arcane Sparks shoots tons of orbs around you that damage whatever they pass through. I tried to get a lot of passive abilities that increase the area effect of my spells. This resulted in something I never saw coming. Instead of making my Arcane Sparks and Missiles huge, the area of effect passive abilities really affected my Arcane Assault. By the end of the run, my Arcane Assault was taking up most of the screen, annihilating anything in its direction. It was truly a beautiful spectacle. After cruising my way through the stage with some help of a massive Arcane Assault, I went from level 33 to 43, and it was finally time for a new weapon. I skipped my way over to the blacksmith, and I had just enough materials to craft the Ice Lord's Blade. This blade came with the weapon skill Arctic Assault, which hits enemies in a long line in front of you. It seemed pretty cool, and I was excited to check out the ice spells in the game. After crafting my new weapon, I upgraded some of my skills in the skill tree, and I headed off to the Dungeon of Despair difficulty 4. Immediately upon entering this stage, my special weapon skill caught my eye, Frozen Blade. I was stabbing enemies with Arctic Assault while chucking a frozen spinning blade at them. It was pretty sick, and I felt powerful. I was having trouble finding ice spells this run, maybe because I didn't unlock enough yet and my pool of ice spells was low, so I picked up some frontal spells that seemed to synergize with my build like Arcane Disc, Quick Strike, and Thunderclap. I switched my build around a lot this run, but after a while I finally found Frostbolt, which is a pretty standard move, but I was just happy I found another ice spell. I wanted to become an ice god, and then I found Blizzard and Ice Vortex, which are pretty decent ice AoE moves, but I got them so late in the run, it felt like all my ice moves were pretty weak. Because of my high defense from passive abilities, I was able to still pull out a win, even though at the end of the run, I was being hit around the map like a ping pong ball. With this win, my level went up from 44 to 51. I unlocked more passive meta skills via the skill tree, and I was now ready to take a shot at the Frozen Wastelands difficulty 5, all curses activated. This was brutal. I was not ready for difficulty 5. I was able to get a full ice build, but my DPS just wasn't high enough to kill the bosses in time. On difficulty 5, 3 bosses spawn at once, and they are stronger and tankier than the previous levels. At one point in this run, there were 4 bosses on the screen, and I was completely overwhelmed. I ended up losing on the second to last wave of bosses. I didn't even make it to the final wave of bosses. But it wasn't all for nothing. I did get a whopping 13 levels. I went from 51 to 64. Frustrated with my first loss in this challenge, I quickly went over to the skill tree and got some more passive buffs. I spent most of my skill points on damage buff. After getting a little stronger, I went right back into the Frozen Wastelands difficulty 5. Even though I lost last time with all ice spells, I still stubbornly picked up all the ice spells I could find again. And again, just like last time, I didn't have enough DPS to kill the bosses on difficulty 5 with ice spells. And I lost again. But I did gain a large chunk of EXP from this defeat, and I reached level 74. Frustrated with my loss, I quickly went over to the skill tree and purchased all of the defensive passive upgrades I could find. And now that I was finally level 70, I could forge my new weapon, Scorching Edge. But there was one problem. I didn't have enough materials for it. I was missing a lot of epic materials found only in the Dungeons of Despair. So I decided it was time to take on the Dungeon of Despair difficulty 5. Even though I have yet to complete a difficulty 5 level, I still stuck to my guns and went for a full ice build again. I was confident that the defensive passive upgrades I purchased were going to carry me through difficulty 5. And I am proud to say my assumptions were correct. Even though the ending was chaotic, I still managed to beat a difficulty 5 stage, and god did it feel good. I was surprised to see that most of my damage was coming from Ice Vortex and Frostbolt amidst the chaos. It was really hard to tell what spells were doing damage and what spells were failing. But nonetheless, I was able to get a victory and my level skyrocketed from 73 to 81. But even after this long-awaited victory, I still didn't have enough materials for my new weapon. So I decided to take on difficulty 6 of the Dungeon of Despair with all curses on to maximize my experience gain and chance to get epic materials. After struggling to defeat difficulty 5, I knew this was going to be a rough stage. And there is no Cinderella story here. I lost on the 4th wave of bosses. I shrugged it off, and I bought some more passive upgrades from the skill tree, and I attempted it again. And I lost again. But I didn't let this deter me, so I tried again. And yet again, I lost. I didn't even get close to winning this time. But I am extremely stubborn. My favorite genre of game is roguelike, so I wasn't going to let a few losses break me. So I attempted it yet again. And this time I beat my way through all the enemies and made it to the final boss wave. And I immediately lost. So I tried again. And this time I ditched my ice build and I went for a physical frontal build with a ton of thrust spells. I was trying to maximize my single target damage and poke the boss's health down while staying at a safe range. And yeah, this failed again. I still wasn't able to defeat the final boss wave. But there was a silver lining to all these defeats. I had gone from level 81 to 107, and more importantly, I had farmed enough epic materials to finally craft my weapon, the Scorching Edge. With my new weapon, I was finally ready to beat the Dungeons of Despair difficulty 6. And so with utmost confidence that my new weapon was going to carry me to victory, I entered the stage. The Scorching Blade's main skill is Firestorm. This move is similar to Bladestorm. It creates a spinning fire vortex around your character. Its special weapon skill is Fiery Blades. This skill summons sword minions around the stage that seek out and kill nearby enemies, and oh boy, was this skill powerful. When these blades attacked bosses, the boss's health was obliterated almost instantly. Because my new skills were fire skills, I decided it was time to move to a fire build. I collected as many fire spells as I possibly could, and I ended up with Flame Wave, Meteor, and Firebolt. But even with my new weapon and almost full fire build, I still failed to defeat the final wave of bosses. I was so close. Now, I'm still pretty new to this game, so I jotted this down as a skill issue. When I saw the damage per skill page at the end of the run, I noticed that Fiery Blades were doing well over double all of my other skills and spells combined. There were two issues I was facing that were barring me from getting stronger. One was the skill issue. I wasn't comfortable enough with my new build to know how to play with it. And two, I couldn't get to the next tier of my skill tree because I was missing the material you get from defeating the final wave of bosses, since I kept dying before that wave on each of my runs. So to remedy these issues, I decided to do an Overlord run on difficulty 1 in the caves of Dazog. At the end of each run, you are faced with 3 portals: a blue portal that takes you back to the main menu, a purple portal that starts an endless run, and a red portal that starts an Overlord run. If you go into the red portal, you'll be teleported to a different level on the same difficulty, but this time there'll be 2 bosses each wave instead of 1. If you go into the red portal again, there will be 3 bosses, and so on and so forth. I don't know if this caps, by the way. I just did it up to the 3rd boss stage. I thought this was the perfect way to train with my new build and get the materials I need to unlock the next tier in my skill tree. Since this was on difficulty 1, I easily breezed through this no sweat. I learned something from this Overlord run. I learned that my Fiery Blades are my main damage source, this weapon, but they are summons that I can't control. So basically what I need to do is stay alive and stay safe in close proximity to the boss and not worry about dealing damage, because my Fiery Blades will eventually reach the boss and do all of the work for me. After this one Overlord run, I had enough materials to unlock my new tier of skills in the skill tree, and I put all of my points into multicast and critical chance, in hope that this will significantly increase my damage. After those upgrades and a better understanding of how my weapon works, I was finally ready to defeat my demon. The Dungeon of Despair difficulty 6. The level starts off pretty easy with minimal enemies. The only enemy I need to be wary of was an invincible Grim Reaper that follows you around slowly, and if you touch him, he sends out a wide AoE around himself. If you get caught in this AoE, you die instantly. He has ended a lot of my runs on this level, but not today. I got my full fire build with the spell Arcane Power, which increases my multicast chance. And when the final bosses spawned in, I remembered my strategy: stay safe, stay close, and give my Fiery Blades enough time to slaughter the bosses. And lo and behold, I finally did it. And I did it well. I didn't even lose a single life. It was as if a huge weight was lifted from my shoulders. But I wasn't done yet. I was drunk with power, and I wanted to utterly destroy the Dungeon of Despair for what it did to me. So I decided to go back into the jaws of chaos and attempt the Dungeon of Despair difficulty 7, all curses activated. From what I know at this point in the game, this looks like it's the hardest difficulty in the game, and I was ready to win. On this difficulty, the game spawns in tons of annoying towers, a clone army of different characters from the game. The bosses are all way harder to defeat, and that goddamn Grim Reaper that kills you in one hit still lurks the stage. But I didn't care. I was a god now. Nothing could stop me. I went in with my tried and true build of just picking up fire spells and arcane powers, and just like the spinning fiery tornado of death and chaos, I beat the hardest difficulty of the Dungeons of Despair with the Spellblade, and I reached level 120. Kneel to me, heathens, for I am the fire god of death. I decide whether you live or die. I am the one kicking you down the well, yelling Sparta. I am the Spellblade. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want me to make more videos like these, like the video so I know what I'm doing is working. Thank you.